Hi, in this video I'd like to go over Laravel Sail, how to get it up and running and how to configure it to work with PhpStorm. So Laravel Sail is a package built by the Laravel team. Essentially it's a wrapper around Docker, so you do need to have Docker installed and running in order to use Sail. But what it allows you to do is not really worry about how to configure the Docker, or get into the deep dives of how to configure containers and images and volumes. Instead, you can just run a couple of commands and have Laravel up and running, having MySQL up and running with latest PHP versions, and being able to run your projects, and just then really concentrate on building your projects rather than thinking about your local architecture. So it's really useful. So I'm just in this video, I'm just going to run through how to get installed and then how to configure it with PhpStorm. So on the Laravel documentation for Laravel Sail, so if I look down for the installation instructions, it's pretty simple to get installed. We just want to install with Composer, and we want to use -dev to make sure it goes into our dev dependencies. That way it doesn't get it's not dependency for production. So I'm just going to put that into that. So I've got a demo project. I said demo projects, that's my personal blog, but I'm just going to move it into traditionally. I've used Valet and I'm just moving on to using Docker. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to record a video going through the process. So first we install it with Composer, and then we just need to actually install Sail itself. And when you do, it'll ask you which of these services do you want to install. So the only one I want at the moment is MySQL, so I'll put in 0 for that. So I'll set the MySQL database to be installed. But when you first actually compile your image, it might take a while. Now running installation, we've now got a Docker Compose file. And if I open that up, this is the actual file that Sail has generated. That's actually got all the Docker configurations in for us. We don't really need to know too much about this. So two things that's worth pointing out is the ports for the actual server side of it. It uses port 80, but it's been published to port 80 as well. So it means we can access it through localhost. And then also the same thing for the database. It's using the default 3306 port, but that's within the container, so you won't be able to access outside of it. But it is publishing it to 3306 as well, so that means we can access the database outside of the containers, using a traditional MySQL client as well. So the actual database credentials, it actually reads it from your environment file. So when you first install this through, it actually updates your environment credentials. So if we look inside the environment credentials now, they're actually using it, because I was using Valet before previously, it was using root as the username, but it's now changed it to Sail. It's also changed the database to DC blog, which is the name of my project, and it's changed the host to MySQL. So what this actually does when it installs, it actually creates two databases, a testing database and a database which is the name of your project. And that way you can use both of them in the testing environment. So one thing I want to make sure that I do is update my PHP unit XML file. So in the past I've used in-memory database, but now I've actually got a proper MySQL database to use. I can just change this to testing, and that way when I run all my tests, it will actually run it through the actual testing database. So that's set up for that. So if I go back to the Composer file, so it's got these environment variables, and you don't actually need to change anything in here, but sometimes it's useful to look over to understand what is going on. So if we jump back to documentation, to actually boot it up, we just need to use vendor bin sail and up. If I go down, so here it talks about aliases sail to a local variable, or to a local shell command. So I've done that. So rather than having to type in vendor bin sail, I can just type in sail. So if I go back to this project and type sail and do up, so if I do sail up, that will start storing the image and all the dependencies, everything that it needs to be up and running. So this process might take a little while when you first run it, but once it's done it once, the next time you need to run it, it'll run much faster. Okay, so that looks like it's finished building now. So now if I go to my project, refresh the page, then at the moment it doesn't load up because the database is empty. I haven't populated the database at all. So if I come out this view, I'll just press Control C, and that actually stops it from running. So if I come back and refresh the page, then the server is no longer running again. So what I can do is do sail up to run it again. So actually I'll just do that again. So bring it back up, and this time it will run much faster. So it's up and running again already. Come back through, refresh the page. I've got ahead of myself on. So now it's actually running, and we can see that it's not running fully on there. So what I'm going to do is open up another tab, leave that running, and then what I can do is actually run commands through Sail, through the container. So I can say Sail, so you can do say migrate. In my case I want to say PHP artisan, and then db build, which is a custom command I've got to populate, run all my migrations and see it all in one go. So now I'm going to refresh the page. Now my application's up and running. So there's nothing to actually see on there because it's just kind of a base application. It's just for a blog, and there's no actual post on there to show, so it's a bit bare at the moment. But that's not the purpose of this anyway. It's just we've got an application, and it's on there and it's running now. So then also if I try to run, so that's kind of it, that's up and running now. And if I come back here and do sail MySQL, that connects to the database. So if I show databases, I can say there's the database, DC blog and testing. And then if I use the DC blog database and then show tables, I can see all the tables that's coming through on the system. So that's working within the container. But obviously you don't really want to work that way. Instead you want to work with a database client. So in my case, I'm using PhpStorm, so I'd rather do it inside PhpStorm. So I'm going to select MySQL as my data source. And then the host is going to be the local host. The username is Sail, and then the password is just password. So this isn't going to work straight away. So if I quick test connection, that's actually working. When I was in the early test, it wasn't working. So what I had to do before was I had to get Sail. So come out there. So when I was doing Sail up, I needed to pass it this -d command, which means it's detached, and then I was able to connect to the database doing it that way. So if I go back to my settings, the thing I'm doing is going to say the database it's going to actually connect to. So then once I press OK to that, it's going to open up my database, and I can see all my tables straight here within Storm, so it makes it much easier to work with. So there's a couple of other things that you will want to do. If you go into your settings, and under PHP test frameworks, what I want to do is I'm just going to remove these settings. I want to start fresh with this. I want to quick post, and as I'm using PES for my test, I want to say PES by remote interpreter. So for the actual interpreter, what I'm going to do is create a new one, and I want to use Docker. So I'm going to select this Docker option. I'm going to select Docker, and it's selected the wrong image for me here. So what I want to do is actually I want to use this Sail. So that's the actual Docker container that I want to use. Press OK to that. So that gets configured for that option. Press OK to there, and now I can select that Docker container. So that means when I'm running my test, it's going to use this connection. The other thing I've noticed I have to do is I need to change the actual name for the container. So on Docker container, if you press on this folder, it puts in bridge, or Storm has bridge by default, and that's not the right name. So the name is actually the name of the project with _sail. And just to kind of go through that process, in order to see what the names are, what you can do is say Docker network and then ls. And then here we see all the container names. So in my case, mine's DC blog _sail. So if I go back into my settings, I'll just start that again because I think I've done that wrong. So I'll just quickly run through the settings again. So if I go back into this Docker container, and rather than bridge, in my case, I want DC blog underscore sail. And that's just so when I run the test, run it in PhpStorm, it's actually going to use the Docker version and not trying to use like a local database. Okay, so now if I try to run my test suite, so initially it's going to tell me that I need to fix this because we don't set the actual default the project interpreter. So if I click on this button here, in this case, actually we have got 8 on select on there, so we'll just see what the fix is complaining. So I need to also select it on this option as well. So once I've done that, now I can hit run, and that will start running through running the test suite of the project. So I can see there now it's green and they actually are passing, so they are getting through. So at this point, I haven't got MySQL installed on my machine itself. It's all done through Docker. So I'm able to run my test suite, and that's actually using a MySQL test database with the name of test or testing. I'm able to connect to the database in Storm to look at this connection. I'd also be using like Table Plus or SQL to be able to look at the database from there. The other thing to bear in mind is it's localhost. So on here, you've got MySQL. That's the actual name of the connection defined within Docker Compose. To actually connect to it, you would actually use like your local IP address, which would be 127.0.0.1. And then in the browser, you just go to localhost. And then you've got the username, password, and setup. But other than that, it's just standard R at this point. So if I go back to my terminal, I'll go back. So I've got the actual base running here. So at any point, so I can keep that running in the background while I'm working with it. And at any point, I can just type in sail and then any other command that I want. So if I did sail and then PHP artisan, it would actually run PHP artisan through the container rather than trying to do it natively. So that's really it. So all the main purpose of this was really to get PhpStorm to play nicely with Docker in a normal day-to-day workflow. I'm quite happy that is now fully working.